Keep fluffing my hair. Oh, by the way, Elise, when you sent me that message, I sat in my chair and it broke. Y'all didn't even see it. I was super smooth about it.
Hello, I see people entering. Some of your names I recognize. Fellow journalists, sex journalists. Yay, we're gonna start.
Oh, people are coming in.
Less than 1 minute. So grab your beverage or whatever you got, and then we're gonna get sexy.
I wish I could see faces. That's the only thing.
We're the stars of the show. No. Okay, yeah. Let's begin. Welcome to our fireside chat virtual panel where we will discuss Lora DiCarlo's new product line and how the sexual wellness industry is turning a peat for social change. Now, you know, it's so nice that like 2020 is over and this year has been super calm. JK, obviously it's a shit show and we're all stressed out. I wouldn't trust anyone who wasn't stressed out right now, frankly, but just the next 45 minutes, it's a break. We're gonna be talking about sexual wellness. We're gonna be reminding you all the ways it's important to get through all of this. And we have so many great questions, so many great products. And I really appreciate it and know all the panelists do too, that you are spending your time with us. So without further ado, let me introduce all the beautiful people you are seeing, starting with Lora DiCarlo, the founder and CEO of Lora DiCarlo. Are we waving? Are we saying hello?
What's up? Thank you all for coming. Super excited about this. I mean, it's sex, so it should be sexy.
And then we have Lorenzo Thione, the managing director of Gaingels, the best name in the world, and the LGBTQ venture investment syndicate. Say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me and inviting me. Very excited about the conversation.
And the goddess, SX Noir, the thought leader of Sex Tech, president of Women's Sex Tech, and the founder of Sex Work Liberation.
Hello, hello, everyone.
And Claire Fountain, writer and therapist.
Yeah, hi, hello. Excited to be able to weigh in on the intersection of mental health and sex tech.
And I am Sophie St. Thomas, your moderator. I am a sex writer. I write for magazines, I write books about sex, and tonight we're gonna talk a lot about it. So let's get straight to it. The first topic that's been on my mind is the current state of the sexual wellness industry, and there's so much to unpack here. But just to kick it off, and we'll start with you, Lora. What does sexual wellness mean to you?
Oh, I think sexual wellness is an individual journey of self-exploration and self-discovery. Sexuality directly informs our identities, and it's what makes us who we are. So the more confident you are in your sexuality, in that process of discovery, the more available and confident you are to show up in all facets of daily and long-term life. That's the kind of confidence that actually allows us to become change makers. I mean, look at the people you're sitting next to today. I mean, digitally, they're change makers, and they're somehow associated with sex tech or sexual health and wellness. And we think that sex tech can often be one of the tools that aids you along that journey. It's a really important one.
SX, what about you?
Hello, hello, the thought leader of sex technology here. I work on the intersection of sex work and sex tech, so arguably the most controversial topics happening right now. And so when you ask me what sexual wellness means, I believe it is fighting the stigma and the shame of sexuality that exists not only in digital space, but also physical space.
Lorenzo, you're up.
Sure. Well, from my perspective, it's really the most underappreciated and undervalued piece of what should be a holistic view of what health and wellness really is. if you really think about what makes us human beings, the fundamental things that are part of our existence, eating, sleeping, thinking, moving, having sex, all of those things have a component of wellness and health that is being and has been looked at for a long time, and where technology can come into play to make it better for us. And last to the bandwagon, last to the party is sexual wellness. And it's so good to see that there's a conversation starting to make that a bigger piece of a holistic picture of what health and wellness really is.
Claire, what about you?
I mean, I think I would echo everything said already in terms of a holistic approach, even from a mental health standpoint. It's so often we talk about our mental health, forgetting that our sexuality and our identity, all these things are wrapped together. They're all lumped together in how we experience ourselves and how we thus experience the world, our communities, and so forth.
While I have you, Claire, I would love to know, when did you start paying attention to and caring about, you know, your sexual wellness and become comfortable talking about that? I know that's a challenge that we all go through at whatever stage in our life.
Yeah, I mean, I got into the work that I do now. I primarily work in terms of the intersection of women, well-being, sexuality, the stories we tell ourselves and our relationships we have with our bodies. And that, of course, crosses over into like sexual trauma work. So on the one hand, personally, I didn't get a choice to not think about sex because of the experiences I was perhaps given in a way. And then on the other hand, that personal experience led me to the professional space of wanting to be able to provide the same sort of like healing and understanding that I needed to now my client. So
yeah, it's fascinating. I've experienced this, and I'm sure all of us have in some way, how, you know, it's okay for the world to sexualize you, even at a very, very young age. But the second you start to take ownership of that, then you're in trouble.
Right.
Laura, since you make all these toys that make me come so hard, I just have to ask, do you think the conversation around masturbation is changing for all genders? That seems to be still one of the most taboo things for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen like an insane amount of change in the last couple of years, particularly in the last 2, and then this year. You know, I think the pandemic is actually, I don't know that it's really changed the way people look at it, but I think what it has done is it's accelerated the conversation that we're having around it, because everybody is literally in this kind of safe digital space where they can talk openly. And I think people are actually starting to explore that sexuality, explore that conversation a little bit more. But unfortunately, there's still a sharp bipartisan divide in many circles and societal factions worldwide. You know, our mission is to destigmatize the taboos surrounding sexual health and wellness. And my hope is that Lora DiCarlo will be able to amplify sex positivity, and that people that are like literally disastrously ashamed or even disgusted by sexuality, for them to even feel even a tinge more comfortable with the subject, because that's where the real change starts to happen.
It's interesting because now, you know, unfortunately, but due to the pandemic, a lot of us don't have access to sex with partners the way we once did. So to me, it seems like the perfect time to get really into masturbating. It's definitely like the safest way, not to sound like an 8th grade health school teacher, but I hope people have embraced masturbation, because you definitely can't get COVID from a sex toy. But as a deeply, deeply problematically bisexual woman, I'd love to ask Lorenzo, can you tell us about the LGBTQ's community interest in sex tech in particular?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we represent the LGBTQ community, its allies, in the way in which we invest in companies. But I think that one of the ways in which we look at the technology in the venture space that is unique is we see the opportunities that are created by virtue of the old and fossilized ways in which investors and markets have considered opportunities. And if there are, you know, obviously there are very important investment opportunities at the intersection of health and tech and wellness and sex. And, you know, some of these have been created and have become even more to the forefront because of macro phenomenon like the pandemic, which has created more attention, as Lora was saying, more opportunities, as you were saying, and also sort of other lack of frictions. So people are finding themselves with more time. You know, from the LGBTQ community point of view, I think we look for opportunities that are from underrepresented founders. That may mean LGBT people, or it may mean women or people of colors. And we are looking at it with the lens of a community that over time certainly has embraced sexual freedom and sex positivity as something that is very much part and core and part and parcel of our culture. So I think it's not, it shouldn't be strange that we have no hang up about it, and then that we see the opportunities where they lie, and we embrace innovative companies like Lora DiCarlo for the opportunities they represent.
Everyone, this is Mama Cat, by the way. She decided she wanted to help me moderate. Lora, we're in the midst of winter. It's freezing. I have a gorgeous dress on just for this panel. It's very tiny. So tell me about I want to know about the heated sex products.
So apparently, we just got word this morning we've already won an award from Wired for best, I believe it's best of show. I know, I was like, thanks, Wired. So yeah, the line actually includes 3 products. It's Drift, our handled bullet, and I'm a total because I totally forgot to bring them back to my house because I took them into the engineering lab, so I would be waving products around, but I forgot, which is terrible. Anyway, we have Drift, which is our handled bullet, Tilt, which is a P-spot and G-spot plug vibrator, and Sway, which is our dual vibration warming massager. And these 3 anatomically inspired pleasure products have been actually ergonomically designed with our consumer in mind. Each one actually has 7 powerful modes of deep rumbling vibration, and I mean deep rumbling vibration. This thing will like just rock your socks right off. It's crazy. And they have 3 patterns as well. So each also features the added bonus of warming sensations for enhanced relaxation and pleasure. The most interesting thing about these new products is the innovative use of thermally conductive material. It's not a secret that, this kind of tech isn't new to the tech industry, but they are new to sex tech. So we actually have a polymer thermal conductivity. We have a polymer thermal conductivity that actually transfers heat more than 7 times more effectively than traditional injected molded plastic materials. Because we didn't use plastic. We actually incorporated a nylon-based polymer that provides uniform heating into all the right places. So we heated the tips of these things right where people wanted the heat, and it isn't splotchy, it isn't stripy, it is fully heated, and it's glorious. And you can actually feel it within seconds of activation. It's very quick. And then the ergonomic and approachable design kind of offers a little bit of something for all kinds of experiences. So we're pretty excited about it. And they've been doing very well in their first couple of days of launch.
Claire, I'd love to get your take on masturbation. Do you find that it's becoming less taboo? Do people talk about that when they come, to work on their sexual wellness practice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We work with, as an aside, anytime I work with anyone and sex becomes part of the conversation, we do a whole sexual backstory, which for anyone is interesting to think, how did I learn about sex? How did I learn about my body? What was I taught? What wasn't I taught? It's a whole process of unlearning for most of us, or maybe taking off the narratives that no longer serve us. But I think it's interesting in terms of masturbation. It's talked about a lot, but just mentioning what Lora was saying about the toy being heated and this idea of having something that is a tool for masturbation or self-pleasure that is also so thoughtfully designed, which makes the whole process, I think, a little easier and empowered, and feels far more aligned for a lot of people when they're even getting into the space of maybe self-pleasure or masturbation, or just learning about their body in general.
Yeah, it's so interesting how warmth is such a core component of wellness, from like a cup of hot cocoa to like your bath to like a heated blanket, but then it's still just like, oh, why isn't this in sex toys yet? Because everything is delayed when it comes to sexual wellness.
Yeah.
Let's see, who should I guess, SX, you are the woman for this question. Why is normalizing sexual wellness so important? What political change do you see coming out of normalizing it?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I am SX Noir, the current president of the Women of Sex Tech. And as I mentioned, Yes, which we're opening up membership soon. More details on that. Women of Sex Tech is an organization of femmes attempting to not only radicalize, but pioneer the sex tech industry. So my background is an activist organizing background, primarily in New York City around sex workers. So when we talk about social justice and that impact on social wellness, we can't ignore the two big things that are happening right now, coronavirus and the Black Lives Matter movement. So what we're seeing is that people are taking charge of their pleasure more than ever. Why? Because they're isolated more than ever. They aren't getting these reflections from real life like they used to. So people are navigating their sexuality through sex tech products like Lora DiCarlo's products, and also just digital space as a whole. So what we're seeing is that people are feeling more united in the idea of social change and social wellness more than they've been before, and that people are understanding that it's vital to have pleasure in your life, and they're understanding the rights of those people like sex workers, sexual wellness experts, therapists, etc., who are trying to facilitate this for us in our culture. So yeah, you know, I call myself the thought leader of sex tech because I'm shameless and standing up for sexual wellness in the social justice space. And I think that we are becoming more aware than ever of like injustices, and this includes in sexuality.
Yeah, just a little to press you a little further. Thank you so much for bringing up Black Lives Matter. I'd love to talk about more how sexual wellness plays a role in anti-racism, in, you know, work that can be done in ways that certain communities may be more marginalized than others.
Absolutely. So something that we can acknowledge in America is our sex negative legislation that is fueled by a conversation around trafficking, sex trafficking, and the sex trade, and how that ultimately impacts innovation and financial resources for the sex tech industry. And so these legislations do tend to come from, let's be honest, a slightly racist place where the most people that are impacted by are BIPOCs, most marginalized people. So we have to understand how policy, legislation, how the anxiety that we're dealing with our government right now impacts our sexuality, impacts our sexual wellness journey, and ultimately impacts the sex tech industry as a whole. Something that I've always fought for is the right for sex to exist in digital space and to end the war on sex in digital space. And again, my sex worker background has given me this kind of secret sauce of understanding how the brunt of the sexuality professionals are being treated, and therefore standing up and fighting. And by fighting for them, we help everyone. And so that's why I'm here in this conversation. With Women of Sex Technology, we are attempting to create a safer space for people to express themselves around sexuality, around entrepreneurship, around innovation in this space. And so this is a direct reaction to sex negative legislation and sex negative policies, right? And so it all very much intersects together. And so, yeah, that's where my work comes into play.
Well, thank you for it. I think deeply. Another component of the world we're living in, you know, in COVID and our government that we just can't ignore is the economy. You know, I think there's no way that all of us here haven't been affected in some way. So Lorenzo, I'd love to ask you, what do you see as a market opportunity for sex tech, and why did Gaingels decide to invest in Lora DiCarlo?
Yeah, first of all, the primary reason why we invest in any company is because we see an awesome team doing awesome things that can identify a market and an opportunity and build a great business, because that's ultimately the job of every investor. I think that the unique lens that we bring is to recognize that there are inefficiencies in some aspects of looking at opportunities that are coming from things that have no relevance to the efficient allocation of capital in market. And one of these things is basically the moral and moralistic and hang-ups around sex and the sort of sex negativity that comes from it. So first of all, recognizing that shifts in the market are happening. Just to go off of what SX was saying, I think one of the biggest sort of tech success stories of 2020 in the context of the pandemic is the incredible financial growth of a company like OnlyFans that has created, you know, democratization of access for sex workers, for even people that maybe didn't even consider themselves sex workers, but wanted to have a different, more positive approach to their sexuality. And this is an enormous commercial success stories. So looking at, with obviously, you know, sort of issues that come from it, you know, thank you for the props, but there are issues like around every technology, and exploitation is one, and sort of the relationship between content creators and markets. You know, we've seen the stories that have happened this year. But just to go back to say what the opportunity is in sex tech generally. I, as an investor, sort of have loved and continue to be super interested in generally the wellness, health, and fitness and connected fitness space. There has been an enormous amount of really great innovation happening. CES has embraced it over time. I think it's time to bring sex tech and sex wellness into that fold. Just to go off of what Laura was saying around temperature, what you were saying also, Sophie, you know, it's really remarkable. I can think of like 4 other companies in which I either invested or wished I had invested, where temperature has made a difference in, and these were health and wellness connected products, where temperature has made a huge difference in kind of advancing the generation and the impact of that technology. So to see these coming to sex tech is also a really positive thing. I will continue to look at opportunities like Lora DiCarlo. I'm excited about things that create a more open approach to sexuality in the context of innovation and business. I can think of examples where companies that have brought STI testing at home, in the convenience of home, that has issues that are public health, that sort of hits on public health and on individual well-being, as well as companies that are using AI to help people sext better. And sort of sexting with bots, and you know, all of this stuff is really awesome, and it leads us as consumers and users to being more well-rounded people.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the opportunities that COVID had created, not to undermine any of the damage, but I was telling some friends earlier, I've heard people say they don't go and get tested for STIs anymore, even if they're sexually active, because they used to go to CityMD, and now it's just like a hub of COVID and they don't want to touch it. So at home testing kits sound amazing. And I was just looking at my notes, and before we move on to the next question, actually some good news that according to a recent report from Allied Market Research, the global sexual wellness market has actually experienced quite astounding growth from, oh my God, 23 billion in 2014 to 74 billion in 2019, and is projected to reach 108 billion by 2027. So there's also an 87% increase in sex toy sales. So, you know, that's some good news. And
it is, and also it's just also a function of as new generations grow and enter the sexually active population, you have changing attitudes and changing views about things like masturbation and sexual well-being and so on. And so even just the idea of looking at how Gen Z identifies within the issues of gender identity and sexual orientation in ways that are unprecedented as before kind of speaks to the fact that sexual well-being becomes a much more at the forefront for those consumer populations as well.
Thank you so much.
I think another important to point out is that when Allied Market Research did that study, it was predicted a few years ago at a CAGR of like 9%, I think back in 2017, that this market would actually reach 50 billion by, I want to say 2023. So we've actually completely blown the original research and studies away in just a couple of years. So the CAGR looks to be kind of not flattening out, but flattening out a little bit. But it's definitely jumped significantly just in the last 2 years than what the original predictions were.
I would like to talk a little bit about social change, social change, starting with the word sex positivity, which is a great word, you know, but it's also kind of I'm always curious what people really mean when they say that. So I'd like to ask each of you, starting with Claire, how do you encourage sex positivity in your life, and what does sex positivity mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, well, sex positivity, it's like, it is necessary to even do the work that I do. And in my view, a positive view of sex is just the ability to even talk about it, normalize it, have it just exist like any other conversation. It doesn't have to be this thing that's covered and coded in all these other words that aren't real language, because the language matters, but it is just existing in a place where it's like we talk about our actual health, talk about our physical health, and then we can talk about our sexual health.
SX?
Hello, everyone. Me again. So if you ask me what sex positivity looks like, it's safe spaces to navigate sexuality in digital space. You know, we've seen extreme examples of terms of service policy changes on big tech platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, right? And so I think that for me, sex positivity, even as Laura mentioned before in this conversation, a lot of people are getting off in digital space. A lot of people are finding this comfort in being able to be open in digital space. And so sex positivity looks like fighting for that right. And how do I bring it into my life? Good question. Great question. I have my Lora toys. I'll show you, actually. I'm lucky enough to have my OG, sorry, it's a little, I have my OG ones, right? So I got this is the 2. And then this is the first one. So this brings a lot of pleasure of, like, for example, blended orgasms, you know, like if I bring a partner into my bedroom and they're like, what is that piece of sculpture? I'm like, well, this is actually a robot. It has more bones and it has more product moving parts in here than your body does. And I'm going to show you how to use it. So that's another way that I like to incorporate just a little bit of positivity, instruction, education, like, into my life. And so Lora DiCarlo products definitely help me facilitate that combo.
Now I want to hear Laura's answer.
Who's?
Laura.
No, okay, sorry. I'm so enamored with SX over here. By the way, where is my Lucy?
Oh my God. So everyone, I have a Pomeranian puppy because Lord DiCarlo has a Pomeranian and I wanted a Pomeranian. And so Lucy's taking a nap because mommy's working. So it's hard being a mother, but you know, we make it happen.
Yeah, from the same breeder too. So Enzo's got some kind of distant cousin / maybe girlfriend. Anyway, yeah. I think, you know, Clara and SX really kind of nailed it as far as, like, you know, I think particularly for me and for people who make it their business, sexual positivity their business, it's always being outspoken about it. And I found that the more outspoken you are, not in a way that is degrading or offensive, but just open and available for conversation and education, and never disparaging, because you never know when you're going to find an ally. I found the most unlikely of humans, the most unlikely allies in humans that I didn't even think, you know, I wouldn't have thought, like, oh, this person would be really interested in this. And I think we make that mistake a lot. Like, we're quiet about talking about sexuality around certain people that we think might not appreciate the conversation. When I think you can talk about it in a really respectful and in kind of in a tasteful manner that allows to open the door up for all kinds of different humans. And that's how we're going to create more allies, is through that open relationship, because the biggest barrier to creating more allies and getting other people to understand more about their own sexuality, the barrier is education. And that's something that we're huge advocates for. So I'm all about just being loud, being an advocate, and providing education when I can, or bringing in people that can educate where I can't, for example. And on a personal note, where sexual positivity is concerned, I have to schedule it. I am so busy that if I don't schedule, it's so much more than just, oh, I'm going to masturbate. It's part of my wellness routine. It's part of my mindfulness routine. I listen to certain tunes when I sleep. I have a very, very strict schedule. I get up very early. I make sure I work out, and I make sure I masturbate. It's all a part of a wellness regime that I think is really helpful when you can actually say, I'm going to do it at this time, maybe 2:30 in the afternoon, considering we're all at home. That's fine too.
I want to hear Lorenzo's answer. SX, did you raise your hand? Okay, Lorenzo, you're up.
Sure. Sort of echoing what's being said, but, you know, for fundamentally, the negativity part that is associated to sex comes from taboos and to making things like things that have not been made normal. So the first way is to bring sex positivity is to normalize the conversation around sex, normalize the conversation about something that is so, intrinsically human that everybody needs and everybody deserves. And then the second part is, how do I bring it into everyday? One way, and I'm not trying to be cheeky, but is really to have the conversation around, as much as possible, the conversation around sex to be normal, even in the context of sort of opportunities for business when it comes to sexual wellness and tech, to how potentially companies can integrate with each other. Other ways in which it becomes a more sort of day-to-day is, make it part of your overall mental health and mental wellness. It's just not being obsessively concerned around it being something bad. I think that ultimately it would be funny if we actually were talking about negativity or positivity attached to any other aspects of our well-being. What's sex negativity? What's food negativity, right? Or food positivity. We should just simply normalize the conversation around sex, and when sex is masturbation is just part of the of our sexual well-being.
I just want to say, what's for dinner tonight?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. I feel very, very lucky that I grew up in the Caribbean to parents who left the U.S. literally because Ronald Reagan was president, and they were like, "This is too conservative. We can't have our children grow up around this." So I kind of learned about sex negativity after I became a sex writer and was just writing about things, and then people would write back and be like, "This is too bad," and I was like, "Oh God, everyone has so many hang-ups in the mainland." And we're going to talk about social change in a second. I will say that, there's the expression, the fish rots from the head. And we've talked about how our government has interfered many times, whether it's through, not allowing sex toys to be advertised on Instagram. We can still hate Instagram, but they're doing that because of government policy, because they don't want their company to get shut down, and just so much of this very old school Christian ideology. And if someone wants to be Christian, I don't care at all, but there's supposed to be church and state. Don't apply that onto me and my body and my pleasure. So on that note, SX, how do you think the sexual wellness industry is promoting social change?
Wow, absolutely love that. I was in a community meeting with Facebook this morning, and we had an amazing conversation about how, yes, this direct pipeline of sex negative legislation in America, for example, FOSTA SESTA, and now that passed in 2018, and now the Earn It Act, which is just entered the Judiciary Committee, right? And so we have to be aware of the political influence on our sexuality. We have to be. It is a non-bipartisan issue. We have to really focus on who is passing legislation that's ultimately helping us or not. And I find that, again, my work comes into play here because sex workers are the first to be the scapegoats for not only freedom of speech and impeding on freedom of speech, but also our sexual rights in virtual space. The biggest thing that I heard from Facebook this morning was, we don't necessarily want these policies. We are abiding to what the current law in America is. And so this is something that's a really big theme when we talk about social change within these big tech companies is the literal legislation that is being passed. And so with my background in activism and organizing, it really helps me a lot within the sex tech industry because we face so much stigma, so much discrimination, so much just denying of access to things that we should have. And just touching on what Lorenzo was saying earlier, that, you don't hear, I always say, we're not selling water bottles. You never hear negative things attached to other industries that are also billion-dollar industries, but with sex, it's automatically assumed. And so when we talk about social change, we have to understand that this major movement that's happening in America toward human rights and social justice, sexuality is absolutely a part of that conversation. This summer, I organized the largest sex worker march in history, and we had almost nearly 1,000 people show up in Times Square to march for the rights of sex workers. And part of those demands was to end further discrimination in digital space. And so this is real. This is very much a real conversation that we're having. AOC just this year said sex workers work because of the need to navigate platforms like OnlyFans because you're not able to actually make your rent or to succeed. And so, not succeed, but to pay your rent to survive is what I mean. And so we have to really understand this deep intersection of sex, labor, financial gain, social change, all of these things are deeply tied in together. So at the Organization of Women of Sex Tech, we are a non-for-profit membership-based organization that is, again, fostering these conversations for people who are deeply impacted by it. So be on the lookout.
Claire, I'd love to hear from you. I think you had raised your hand, so you might have something to say, but I also have a question. I'm curious what you think is missing in the sexual wellness space industry. What kind of barriers do we still need to break down?
Ooh, I mean, right now, the biggest thing happening in the last week or two has been the new Instagram guidelines of they're censoring sex educators now. And there's also been talk of mental health professionals whose licenses are being taken depending on how they present on social media, which is like a big issue with moral policing, body policing, sexism. There's all those layers. So I think what needs to happen is more of what we've been talking about is like normalizing this and looking at policy that's affecting people that are trying to do the educational work and trying to stand up for people that it is their line of work. So I think that that really has to change. But yeah, earlier I was just going to mention the whole idea of like sex negativity comes from a place of fear and comes from a place of moral policing. But moral policing is like a tale as old as time, especially for this country regarding sex, women's bodies, marginalized people's bodies, etc.
And Lora, how do you think the sexual wellness industry will continue to make self-pleasure a form of self-care in 2021?
I think particularly with our movement into the more of a mainstream space, you know, I think the way that we're going to move forward is more holistic and educational approach using customer and community informed designs. We really need to talk to our consumers and our customers and our communities, not just assume that we know what's best for them. So our approach moving forward is not just, you know, it's not within the binary, it's actually within the experiential. So what kind of experiences are you, you know, are you after? What kind of experiences do you want to have? You know, how, and we want to be able to be there for you as a company, for our community from the inception all the way to purchase and then afterwards. That's why we offer the sexual wellness coaching program, and that's free to anybody that wants to set up a session. So if you're not sure which product to buy, if you have questions about communication with your partner, we're actually certifying all of our front-facing people as certified sex educators, including myself and Cara Delavine, who's recently come on as our co-owner and creative advisor, so that we can so we can really be there for and show up for our consumers. But I think at the end of the day, it's interacting with our community, and it's approaching this in a very holistic educational approach.
Hell yeah. All right, press, I know you're here even though I can't see your face. At 6:15, we're gonna start taking your questions for panelists. So if you wanna start dropping them in the group chat, if you have just general ones, throw them in there. If you have any specific questions directed to a specific panelist, please let me know so I can make sure to direct it to the right person. We have a few questions that we already got in from email. Oh, this one interesting. Essex, I'm curious. For now, sex education is a lot focused on protection to avoid disease or pregnancy. Do you think it's important to talk about pleasure, consent, masturbation?
Was that one for me?
Yeah, and I bet Claire would have a good answer for that one too.
Yeah, I think Claire would actually knock that out of the park.
All right, Claire, you're up.
I'm muted. Welcome to the official Zoom problem we all have is when we forget. I was excited. I was listening. Oh, in terms of, yeah, I do think it should include pleasure. There's rarely conversation around pleasure. And it's, I mean, we're in a moment where it's hard to remember pleasure and it's hard to prioritize pleasure. And we see sex as this thing that you either, again, moral policing around it. You don't do, you have to do in this one way. It's performance-based. It has an end. This is what it looks like. One part of pleasure and usually one gender's pleasure is prioritized over the other. And so I think we need a whole revamp of how we experience sex, how we can experience our bodies, the relationship we have with both of those, and that has to include pleasure, joy. Sexual interactions are intimate interactions that have nothing to do with the end, right? Like, or the performance of either body or expectations placed on either body.
I'm curious, what age do you think you should start like talking to your kids about sex education, or that should be brought up?
I mean, you can start talking to your children about their bodies as soon as they start asking and being curious about their bodies and using the correct terminology, right? Like we call an elbow. Why is it so hard to call the other pieces of our bodies what they actually are? You know, and language really matters. That's a huge thing in any sort of like feminist literature, et cetera, is that like language matters. Like the words we use for things matter. And I think that that goes for all genders, everybody, no matter how you identify one way or the other, learning what pieces of your body are what, do what, et cetera, et cetera. And along with consent can start really early, like not forcing children to hug relatives, understanding that you have a say in what you do like and you don't like near and around your body, you know? And these are small interactions that grow towards how a child becomes a young adult, becomes an adult, and experiences the world and other people.
I have a question for SX, if you're ready.
Yes, I feel like we actually are really like hanging out. Like like every time I look at Laura, I'm like, you know, Laura's like the friend that you can't sit next to in church because you know you'll start laughing and you have to be moved to the back because you can't.
I know. I feel like your facial expressions every now and then. I'm like, I know what you're thinking.
I'm sorry, Sophie. Back to business.
No,
What's the question?
On my screen, you guys are next to each other, so it kind of looks like you are sitting together. Your walls kind of blend quite well. But what are your thoughts on the recent conversations around censorship on social media platforms because of the Trump ban? Mm-hmm. How do folks who have been banned in the past for sex work and education feel about this move from social media platforms? Ooh, yeah, that's a toughie.
Okay, listen. So the Women of Sex Technology, our second annual conference that will be coming sometime in March, is actually going to be based on the conversation about censorship. It's something the sex tech industry experiences so deeply, from the ban of female pleasure advertising to the ban for financial services, etc. First of all, regulation is not censorship. Regulation is not censorship. No one is allowed to have a public platform that is inciting violence. Period, point blank, full stop. Sex workers have been literally censored by their accounts being deleted, by their shadow banning, unfair and disproportionate shadow banning, and just an all-around sex negative terms of service, like we've just seen with the more clear distinctions on December 20th on platforms like Instagram. And so what we're seeing around Section 230 is the Internet Decency Act, right? And so legislation like FOSTA, SESTA, and EARN IT impacts Section 230. And so what's happening now is that our current President Trump has incited violence on a platform that is deemed to be public, but unfortunately Twitter is not a public platform. It is a privately owned company that has regulation within its terms of service that everyone has to adhere to. So this idea of taking down Section 230 is an absolute disaster and should not happen at all. And so what we're seeing is, for lack of better words, right-wing terrorists being very upset that they do not have the access to the same platform that everyone else does because of their incitement of violence. And so I think that it's really important that we continue to have conversations around not only the monopoly of big tech. Why is it that Twitter, you can have 80 million followers on Twitter? Why is that? And then also understanding that regulation is not censorship and that regulation is okay. Regulation creates a safer space for everyone. And so we're seeing Trump cry around 230. In my inner community conversations, we don't see anything really moving forward with trying to take down 230, but it's something to understand that sex workers have been the brunt of, again, freedom of speech being impacted because sex workers are seen as criminals or seen as people who should not be allowed on a platform, have been experiencing this for a while. And so people are becoming more and more aware of not only the overarching reach of big tech, but also our government. So it's a fascinating conversation, and I'm super in tune to it because it's going to be vital to sex technology, what ends up happening with Section 230 under the Trump regime.
Yeah, it's completely fascinating and also just like such bullshit, like obvious bullshit to me, and I think really speaks to America's relationship with both violence and both sex. You know, there's the kind of commonly used critique that a film that has like the slightest bit of sex, and oh my god, if it's like gay sex or like Black people sex, then it's totally gonna be like an R-rated film, right? But they throw this absurd violence in PG films and no one says anything. So people, you know, when like some titties make everyone want to, you know, deplatform someone and like you know, lose all of their income, but then you have one of the most powerful figures in the world inciting violence, and everyone wants to be able to incite violence, and like they get mad when they can't do that, and they're obviously just such different issues. But we don't have that much time left, so I want to take these questions. This is for Lora. What lessons did you or the company at large take away from the critiques of the first OSEG? Forgive me if I didn't pronounce that right.
OSEG, yeah. I'm assuming that's just Joho asking. You know, it's yeah, it is. So I think what we learned right up front is what I said in the last during the last question is that consumer feedback is really key. We had hundreds and actually probably a couple thousand responses and feedback, and not only just feedback coming in, but we were going out and asking people, okay, you know, what can be different? What can we change? How can this be better conformed to fit multiple bodies? You know, what did we do wrong? What can we do right? And how can we make this better? And we actually we launched OSEG 2. We launched OSEG 1 in January of 2020. And then we ended up launching OSEG 2 by August of 2020. I'm like, it's been a really crazy year. I'm forgetting shit all over the place, I guess. So we ended up taking in so much feedback and asking people exactly what they needed. And then we started doing studies with people that were using the product and asking them how it could be better. I actually got on the phone, I got on video, I got on Zoom and talked to as many people as I could and asked them how it could be better. I talked to sex educators, how can it be better? And then we started actually taking that process and then applying it to every product. So every single product, I'm reaching out to sex educators, to random people. Hey, what did you think? I want your feedback directly. And sometimes people freak out because they're like, holy, wait, this isn't the company reaching out, but you're the CEO and you're reaching out. Yes, because I care and because I want to know what your experience was like and how can we do better. Just to speak to Jess directly, like we read, you know, your feedback was really, really important to us, you know, understanding exactly where we can pivot, where we can make changes. And we're going to continue to innovate on that product additionally and continue to make it better as we can. You can't have everything perfect out of the gate. I'm just really, really happy that we were able to get up and running and continue to run and do what we did in sales this year in order to keep afloat and to see 2021 and continue to innovate. And now we have these new products that I'm really proud of, and I couldn't be more thankful for the team that I have that supports all of this innovation that we're completing.
Thank you so much. I want to ask this question from one of the journalists to Lorenzo, kind of while we're on the topic of products. How many years do you think until more mainstream companies and brands will invest in sex tech?
How many more years before? I mean, I actually think it's just right behind the corner. I really do believe that we're going to see a number of changes in the way in which, as consumers, like I said, as the new generations kind of supplant the old ones, I think that's absolutely going to happen. I don't know that I am coming prepared with an exact number, but I think 5 years is probably a good idea. I mean, you know, anywhere less of that feels like it's going to happen tomorrow, and any more than that, it probably feels like cars are really going to start driving or flying themselves. So something in between. And I'm also really excited to see where this kind of innovation can go in integrating technologies. I think, you know, it'll be really interesting to see how connected devices really interact with sexual health and sexual wellness, and that'll be really interesting as well.
Claire, I have a question for you. Let's see, how can sexual wellness products help intimacy with couples? Sounds pretty pertinent right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, the whole thing with intimacy between a couple, I mean, intimacy can be expressed in so many different ways, right? From the materials we wear, the food we eat, just the way that we have a sensory experience with our bodies. And in terms of being within a couple setting, to know yourself is the way in which you can then communicate that to a partner. It helps you empower yourself with your own body, empower you to know what you like, what you don't like, empower you to even have a conversation with your partner. So all those type of experiences, when you're empowered and your partner's empowered in yourselves and your bodies, you're able to connect. And when you connect more, it bridges more intimacy and more bonding. So definitely smart tech plays into that, because when you have a product that's so thoughtful with helping someone become empowered in their body, that is only going to behoove the relational nature of what's happening.
Yeah, I have found, especially, usually me and my partner date other people together and have a bit of an open relationship that we've closed for safety reasons right now with COVID. But I find that sexual wellness products and sex toys, regardless of your relationship format or really anything, can still offer, newness, like the exciting of just something new, a new different sensation. Like a sex toy doesn't feel the same way necessarily as like oral sex does, or like a hand, or what you're used to. So it's just really, they say that variety is key to a long-lasting sexual relationship, but that doesn't have to mean like lots of different partners. That can mean so many different things. And to me, that's played a huge role in my life with sexual wellness products. And now I have a question for SX. Let me find it. Oh no, I think I have one for Lora. Yeah, why I'm gonna fuck up her last name. Why Cara Delevingne?
Oh, Cara Delevingne?
Yes, that.
Why was it? Why Cara Delevingne? I don't see it.
That's all the question is. So you're just gonna have to run with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why not personally, but
right. So I think some folks have it a little bit backwards. Cara actually came to us over a year ago and approached me and said that she had been looking for a sex tech company that she actually wanted to start her own company originally, and just realized, holy moly, being an entrepreneur, like, that is serious business. Maybe I'll partner with a sex tech company. And she said, I looked and looked and didn't find anything that really spoke to me on a brand level, on a mission level. And my agent actually pointed out Lora DiCarlo, and I hadn't seen it because he hadn't launched yet. This was before January 2020, so she was looking for products and she wasn't seeing anything that really resonated with her. So she saw everything that we had done on a mission level, and the importance of robotics and understanding human physiology and creating products that speak to that physiology, and wanted to have a conversation and take into consideration a partnership. And we met earlier last year and pretty much just fell in love with each other. She's amazing. She's an amazing human being. She's absolutely 100% authentic. She is kind of reveling and walking her own sexual journey and kind of understanding, what it is that, that really kind of lights her fire as a human being, but is really curious about what other people's experiences are. So she's on top of that, she's really excited about using that kind of database, the people that she has following her, almost 60 million followers last time I checked. And, those folks are really, really engaged, and they're really willing and able to work with us on data and let us know, like, what do people want? Are we speaking to enough types of bodies? Are we speaking to enough types of different generations? And, she's, like I said, she's just very unapologetic, very authentic, and very excited about the partnership, and has an amazing creative brain. And having her sit down with our engineers was, at that point, it was just kind of a no-brainer for me that we should absolutely have her come in. She's got some amazing product ideas and creative ideas. And she may be a really, really busy ultra celebrity, but this is probably one of the most important projects that she's ever done. And she said that to me herself. And I think it does speak to a little bit of a kind of a transition into more mainstream. It's, and I saw something earlier today in the news that, is it a marketing play, or is this really actually, celebrities are buying into this because it is mainstream? I think it's a little bit of both. And I think that that's perfectly acceptable to be so. But if Cara can help make it a little bit more approachable, or help us to normalize the conversation, I'm in. And she's been amazing to work with.
We have 5 minutes left. I have a question for SX, a question for Claire, and then if anyone has anything really urgent, you better say it now because I don't want to keep you all late. I think Claire's question makes sense to go first. As we know, everybody is different. What do you say to young women who need to use lubricants or sex tech to reach orgasm?
Oh, I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions that we have to get past, that idea of performance and expectation of our bodies. And there's somehow this narrative that lube is bad and that bodies are just supposed to, I mean, maybe it's popular songs now, but bodies are just supposed to be these magically wet, wonderful things all the time. And if there's not, there's something wrong with our bodies. Something's wrong with us, right? And we internalize that so quickly and so easily. So I think we have to, again, normalize the fact that lube is okay. Lube is actually wonderful. It can make everything so much more comfortable. It can ward off engaging in certain things without proper lubrication can lead to greater risk of infections, pain, all sorts of things, right? Which another layer of shame. There's something wrong with me. There's body, or there's something wrong with my partner's body, all these levels. So I think, again, normalizing the conversation around how we use it, when we use it, that our bodies, high and low, they do different things on different days, given different experiences. Sometimes they do what we'd like them to do. Sometimes they may do something we don't really like them to do. But the sex has all of this, right? Like we have to really just humanize the sexual experience, that it can be messy and unexciting. And, you know, it's not what we maybe see in porn or we see in other representations of like movies, cinema sex, right? Like it's not always that romantic. You fall off the bed, bodies make weird noises. Sometimes you really need lube. Sometimes you just want lube. And again, if you need toys to figure out what you like to do, I hear this often that some partners do not want to get their partner a toy because they're afraid it will please them better than they do. That's their own insecurities, that's their own projections working through that. So if you're able to learn your body with a toy, you're better able to then communicate that to a partner and help you get there as well. So again, it's that whole idea of like having a conversation that's like a little more laid back, a little more normalized. Aren't really having them, especially not in like mainstream representations of sex and relationships.
Yeah, I love lube. I never not use it. Like, obviously,
the lube
sex.
Lord DiCarlo has is the best. The lube they have is the best lube.
Well, I'll have to try it right away, right after I ask SX this question. How has your perception of sex toys changed as you've gotten older? What about Lora DiCarlo products excite you?
Wow. Okay, so here's the thing. It's like, as you all know, like I am the thought leader of sex technology, right? So I work, people always ask me, how did you get into sex tech? It's because of sex workers, because they are the literal experts of sex. Like, it's awesome. And so, you know, I came across Lora DiCarlo through the Women of Sex Technology. And I was just fascinated with her products, not only who Lora was, but also the team that was creating these products. It was the first time I was hearing words like, yes, we have non-binary people on our team. We have trans people on our team. Our products are trans mask friendly, like these kind of, these words. And I'm thinking, well, wow, maybe I should try them out. And so I think, for me, I am a bit vanilla in my sex life. I'm not gonna lie, it's hilarious. Like, people think because I work in sex tech and you know, with porn stars and all the whole thing, that I'm just like this raw person. I'm like, no, give me a good old missionary and anyway, let me not, right? It's still daytime, Lord. But my point is that, you know, Lora DiCarlo products made it very unintimidating to take time with myself and learn how to use these products. And alongside the coaching that they now offer, it's been an incredible resource for someone who's supposed to know all about sex, because we as educators and influencers and activists, we are still discovering ourselves every single day. So I think it's absolutely amazing to know that there's almost a support system behind a product. You know, you have these bigger products like Satisfier and WeVibe, and it feels a bit more kind of corporate. For whatever reason, I know that Lora DiCarlo's big business, there's this personal. I know if I email Lora DiCarlo and I say, hey, can we talk as far as the company, they will message me back. And so as a sex tech, you know, person, I think that Lora DiCarlo was like one of the first brands that I felt really moved by and felt really connected to. So yeah, that's my answer.
Well, we are at time. I want to thank all of you so much, but especially Lora for putting this together and having us. Lora, do you want to say any last words, send everyone out on anything?
I mean, enjoy. I know that most of the folks here are here through CES. Enjoy the show. Definitely, if there are other sex tech booths, go give those a visit, and you know, make sure that you should all be receiving product, I believe. Check that out, and if you have any follow-up, these three folks, Lorenzo, Claire, and SX, we handpicked them for a reason. They are amazing human beings. That if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to them. And just really, really honored to be on a panel with y'all. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Women of Sex Tech membership is opening up soon, and we're looking for investors. Women of Sex Tech, plug that in for us too. Okay, we love you.
Or please, we need help. We need money.
We need money. I know. I need to go get Lucy to go say hi, but it's okay.
Well, I hope everyone has a lovely evening. I'm gonna go downstairs and check to see if I have my package to try some of that.
Oh yeah, and enjoy. All right. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.